What if our education system is designed for a world that no longer exists? Parents, come, we need to discuss this. When I did a transition from engineering to education, one of the things I was really curious about was how did education start? Who started education? Who are these philosophers that decided that this is how school must be? And what I found would interest you. So education started as informal. If you had a child and you wanted them to learn a skill, you will send your child to someone that you feel knows that skill. So at the time, maybe you wanted your child to be a shoemaker, a dressmaker, an artist. You will put your child with someone that had the skill, and then your child will become an apprentice. In that informal way of learning, your child is not sitting anywhere and writing loads of information. Your child is seeing, your child is doing. And at some point in that arrangement, the master or the expert will determine that your apprentice can now gain independence or freedom as we know it in our parlance. And I feel like this is the kind of education that some of us in Nigeria still practice. Our Igbo sisters and brothers still practice this informal education. But fast forward to industrial era in the 18th and 19th century. It happened that industrialization had come upon the human race. We're now producing things in mass. And these industry giants, these founders of these industries, decided that there needed to be a way to get workers up to date and fast, right? So it couldn't then be one person to three people in an apprenticeship program. They needed to have schools or a gathering that could take 300, 500 students at once that would prepare them for factory work. Hence the school system that we have. And so when you go to a classroom and you see a teacher in front of the classroom giving information, loads of information to children and expecting quietness, expecting not to be challenged, expecting obedience, you would be able to trace it back to the industrial era. Because for you to work in a factory, you cannot question the set rules that have been put in place, right? So they needed that kind of efficiency. And that model of education worked for them. Now, to also put light into this era of industrialization and how important it was for the human race, I think we would remember the internet era, right, in the 1990s, and how much it literally changed how we worked and how we lived. And so we've gone through that era, the internet boom in the 1990s, and we've come to AI. And guess what? Hundreds of years after, we are still expecting the same things. We're still doing the same things in our classroom. We're still expecting children to load up information and then regurgitate during exams. And that's what we applaud. Meanwhile, there's no human that can memorize as much as AI. Why do we still need to have children memorize information? Why are we not celebrating the skills that are needed in this age and at this time? Skills like creativity, because children need to think outside of the box if you're going to compete with these AIs, right? Skills like collaboration. The world has become a small village. How do you collaborate? How do you speak? What is your public speaking skill? What is your communication skills, right? Skills like curiosity. Instead of always getting children to fit into a box, why are we not exploring their curiosity? Why are we not helping them to become more innovative? So the question is, what are the things we must do in our school today that would help prepare our children for the future we have no idea about? Because yes, we are seeing AI, but I can assure you, we have not seen the breadth or the impact of AI in the future that our children will live in. Now, we cannot also talk about the future of education without talking about the future of work. Let me shock you further. Do you know that the structure of school as we know it, the 8-to-3 structure, was actually modeled after the needs of that time in the industrial era in the 18th and the 19th century? Because workers had a rigid system of work. So you come in and then you go. Then you pick up your child and you go home. So essentially, we cannot talk about the future of education without also thinking about the future of work. And that has changed drastically with the advent of AI. I mean, AI is completely revolutionizing the way we do work. It's expunging full sectors of industries, right, of careers. And so our school system needs to think about the kinds of skills that we need our children to have, especially because we just do not know. So, how do we prepare children for a future that we cannot yet predict? It is by giving them the skills that would help them no matter what happens. So, creativity, being able to create things out of nothing, critical thinking skills, which is to be able to think critically about things and find solutions to those things. And collaborative skills are skills that we must put at the forefront of our education system. Imagine this: you're preparing for surgery, you've been prepped, and you're on the surgical bed ready for your surgery. And your doctor leans into you and says that, don't worry, I am very skilled in surgical practices from 100 years ago, and I will be using those exact methods on you today. Would you stay or would you jump and run? That is exactly what we're doing to our children. We're preparing them with the same curricula, with the same system that has existed for hundreds of years. And at this point, we need to begin to think and challenge ourselves on how to redesign the entire education system to profit our children so that our children are adequately prepared for the future that we know nothing about. In redesigning our education system, we must know that education cannot just be about transferring of knowledge. It cannot just be about passing of exams. We must encourage children's curiosity rather than suppress it. We must teach children how to think and not what to think. Because sometimes the most powerful way to rethink the future begins with two simple words: what if?